It had been an intensely hot summer in Brisbane, made worse by the drought, in which no significant rain had fallen for more than 2 years. Every couple of days, clouds would roll in and gather across the sky as if primed for rain. But the sun would set without a drop, and by the time it rose again in the morning, the clouds would be gone, swept by the wind out to sea, and with them, the hope of salvation. So it was with keen interest and enthusiasm that on the 30th of January 1882, locals read the Brisbane Courier front page advertisement. Announcement extraordinary. The great scientific experiment of tapping the clouds, or rainmaking, will be attempted on the Brisbane Racecourse on Saturday 4th of February by Professor J.H. Pepper. John Henry Pepper, or Professor Pepper as he preferred to be called, was by this time well known to the people of Brisbane. He had arrived in Australia from England 3 years earlier, bringing with him a lecture-cum-stage show that skillfully merged science and entertainment, with demonstrations ranging from optical phenomena and sound amplification to chemical magic and the physics of weaponry. He impressed and enthralled critics and audiences alike. His shows toured across the country to Melbourne, Sydney, Goulburn, Bendigo, Geelong, Orange, Adelaide, Hobart and Perth, with stops in between at any town large enough to have a theatre. The shows regularly evolved and changed, bringing in new elements of scientific discovery. However, the centrepiece of the attraction was always the ghost. History would name the illusion after him, but it was not in fact his own invention. A precursor to cinema, Pepper's ghost was an optical illusion that combined the reflective and transparent properties of glass, a hidden area below the stage, and electric lighting to manifest a convincingly apparent translucent ghost. The ghost would appear on stage as if from thin air, interacting with props, furniture and actors before once again fading into obscurity. Pepper soon adapted his ghost effect, after hearing a story in Sydney, to incorporate the popular folklore of the ghost of Frederick Fisher. Fisher was a former convict whose ghost revealed himself one night to a passer-by. Sitting on a fence, the ghost appeared slowly, then lifted his arm to point to a nearby field, which was later discovered to be his own burial place, leading to the murder charge of his former neighbour and friend. Unfortunately for Pepper, despite the initial enthusiasm in each town, audiences always tired of the ghost within a month, and so as numbers began to dwindle, Professor Pepper prepared to pack up the show, and just like a circus, his family, crew, and stage props moved on, ready to bring the spectacle to a new community. Pepper and his show reached Brisbane in July 1881, and on the opening day of his performance, the advertisement in the Telegraph enthused that Pepper would not present the mere dry bones of science, but clothe it in so fascinating garb that his patrons cannot fail to be delighted. But alas, Pepper's show opened around the same time as another professor's, a man passing himself off as Professor Anderson, the great wizard of the North, who had in actual fact died some 7 years earlier. Despite flattering reviews, Pepper struggled to compete with the appeal of Anderson's show, which promised the beheading of a lady, novel and original beyond all precedent, handsome presents, and hundreds of gifts. After just 1 week, Pepper packed up the show and moved on. As summer approached and the drought persisted, Pepper became absorbed by the concept of using science to wondrously summon rain, just as he had used science to invoke his ghost so effectively. For centuries, theories had proliferated on the effect that blasts of artillery fire had in bringing about heavy rainfall, with scores of military leaders, including Napoleon, holding steadfast to the belief. In 1871, the retired American Civil War general Edward Powers published his book, War and the Weather, or the Artificial Production of Rain, and it was undoubtedly this book that solidified Pepper's enthusiasm for undertaking the rainmaking experiment. Pepper's fervour and confidence empowered him to persuade a number of associates to gift or loan him the materials necessary for the experiment: 3 miles of steel wire, much rope, a landmine, 10 cannons, nearly 100 weight of gunpowder, and powerful rockets from the HMS Cormorant. The plan was to bombard the clouds with cannon fire and rockets, creating smoke and explosions in the sky that would encourage precipitation. A purpose-built kite would also fly up high, and a landmine it carried would be triggered by wire to alter the electrical conditions of the clouds. With great anticipation, the fateful day arrived, and almost 700 visitors paid the 6-pence fee for entry to the racecourse. To Pepper's dismay, despite numerous attempts, the kite only managed to fly a short distance, its steel frame proving far too heavy to be lifted any significant height. Next, Pepper watched as the cannon were fired. First, a gun containing the landmine, then the 10 cannons in quick succession. When the final cannon fired, the gun itself shot through the sky and crashed into an empty bandstand, narrowly missing a crowd nearby. Then, the rockets were launched, 2 of which had dangerously horizontal flights that again, just by luck, avoided disaster. Pepper stood, watching the scene unfold. People were laughing and jeering. Some in the crowd had taken the kite and were attempting to launch it themselves. Internally, he beckoned the clouds. Open sky. Open sky. Open sky. But the clouds remained unflinchingly resistant. It was then that Pepper saw him, almost motionless, the ghost of Frederick Fisher, sitting on the picket fence of the racecourse just as he had sat on the fence in Pepper's stage show. Fisher slowly raised his head and looked up, staring directly at Pepper, his gaze interrogating him with the knowledge of the secret the 2 men shared. In the days that followed, Pepper was mocked mercilessly by the public, fellow scientists and the press, with the Queensland Times declaring the episode a pseudo-scientific fiasco. He vowed that he would attempt again, but before long he resolved to yield, declaring, "My experiment in Queensland was received with such derision and insults that in the face of those hard, steely railings I shall leave to others the honour and expense of trying to do good by gently persuading the clouds to drop fatness." Just a week after Pepper's doomed experiment, the drought broke, and Brisbane was flooded with torrential rains.